Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, May the 28th, 2025. Today I want to talk about Liverpool Football Club in light of the recent events which took place on Monday the 26th when Liverpool were celebrating their victory in the Premier League, but being the top club at the end of the season, and there were hundreds of thousands of fans. In Liverpool, and someone rammed the crowd, and I don't think there were any deaths, but there were injuries, and it really spoilt the day. And so I want to look at the astrology of what was happening, and also consider the charts of Liverpool Football Club. It was founded on a particular day. A chart for Liverpool as a town, going back to 1207. And also I want to look at some horoscopes of some other bad events that have taken place involving Liverpool Football Club. In particular, the Heysel Stadium disaster and also the Hillsborough disaster, which these things are remembered for a very, very long time. This is something about football. Football in Britain, there is, or England. Of course, England and Wales has one football league, and then there's another one in Scotland. But memories are long. But before I talk about Liverpool, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, May the 20th. So here's a chart for today, set for noon, New York time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, if appropriate. And so here we have the chart for noon, and you can see that the moon is on the cusp, kind of. It's getting ready to move from Gemini to Cancer. By the way, there's no such thing as a cusp in astrology. You're either on one side of the line or you're on the other side of the line. You can't be on both. So it is a once and for all change. So at noon New York time, moon is in Gemini, and it moves into Cancer, well, at just after 6:30 in the evening London time. So if you're in the Americas, then late morning, lunchtime, around that time, moon moves out of Gemini into Cancer. It kind of depends where you are. If you're in California, then that would be 10:33 a.m. If you're in New York, that would be 1:33 p.m. So it kind of depends where you are. So it's a bit of a mixed day with the moon. Moon may be in Gemini, it may be in Cancer. It depends. And we're still feeling the new moon. So there was a new moon on Tuesday. Might even have been Monday evening if you're in the Americas. And when the moon is still in the same sign as the sun, that is the beginning of the moon. Sorry, the beginning of the new moon, and the moon is still close to the sun. It's still in the same sign as the sun. So the moon is under a certain amount of pressure, and it's often said, at least I often say, that you shouldn't really start something with a new lunar cycle until the moon is actually out of the sun's sign. So moon moving into Cancer is probably something to look forward to. Yeah, just before the moon moves into Cancer, it makes a conjunction to Jupiter, and Moon-Jupiter conjunction, which is an aspect which I think that all of us are going to feel today, is something fortunate, and things should work well for us, and we may have a certain spontaneity and an enthusiasm which can be really helpful. A bit of positive thinking can always be useful. So then the moon moves into Cancer, and in one sense that's a good thing because moon is moving into its own sign. But when the moon moves into Cancer, it straight away makes a square to Saturn and a square to Neptune. So to begin with, the moon moving into Cancer may be a little difficult, and we may have to deal with certain things that we don't necessarily want to have to deal with, and that may be the case also that there is some fear. We know that things have changed, and we know that we have to move on, but we don't really want to move on because we're worried perhaps about what the future might bring. But it's just fear, and I don't think that fear is necessarily based on anything real. So that's the picture for New York. So if we set that chart for Sydney, Australia, it's a little different because the moon is, earlier in Gemini. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, the moon does not go into Cancer today, and you can feel the Moon-Jupiter conjunction, all day long. In fact, as the day continues, the moon gets closer and closer to that conjunction of Jupiter. So it's probably the case, all things being equal, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but it's going to be an easier day than if you're in the Americas, for example, because you've just got that Moon-Jupiter conjunction just getting stronger and stronger as the day progresses, and so things really should work out quite well for you, even though it's a new moon, even though the moon is still close to the sun. You may find that you can do things which really help out your cause, and if you want to be positive and enthusiastic, then go ahead. I think that's the right approach. And then we've got the heliocentric view, putting the sun at the center of the solar system, and like yesterday, Mars is very close to the opposition of Saturn. Now it's a heliocentric opposition, so it's not so immediate and personal as if it were to be a geocentric opposition, but still we may feel that we are under pressure, that things aren't necessarily working out as we'd like them to do, and also there can be a sense that we are living in a difficult and maybe even dangerous world, and we're reminded of how bad things can get with Mars opposition Saturn. But I must emphasize that this is not anything we have to take too personally. It's just what is happening with the world in which we are living, and Mercury, heliocentrically, Mercury is moving from Taurus to Gemini, and Mercury is starting to make a sextile to Neptune. In fact, it is making a sextile to Neptune. So Mercury sextile Neptune is a fairly minor aspect, but it might make some of us more sensitive, maybe even more telepathic than usual. So if you can tune into that sextile, that might be a useful thing to do. So let me now turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, May the 28th, 2025. Aries. Aries, you continue to have a lot to say, and the things you say can be of real value. You do have enthusiasm, real enthusiasm, and so if you have a chance to be positive and to be optimistic and perhaps to make people feel good about themselves, then feel free. You can make people happy. It's not so difficult, and could be through your actions, through your words, and also through your determination. At the moment, Aries, you are quite determined, and if you have an idea, you're going to want to see it through, and you can be quite convincing, and this ability to be convincing is an attribute that you really need to leverage. Some people need to be convinced because, as far as they're concerned, things aren't going well. I mean, not universally. This is not universally the case, but some people are not especially positive, and you have the capacity to cheer them up and use the fact that 4 planets are in Gemini. And so, with this Gemini energy, through your words, you can change things, and it's the excitement that underlies your words. You give the impression that you can be trusted, that you know things that other people don't know, that you can make connections, and you can show everyone the path forward. So that, I would have said, is entirely positive. Though there is a change as the day progresses. The moon moves out of Gemini into Cancer. And so, if you're in the Americas, that change could happen late morning. Or sort of early afternoon if you're in New York. And so moon moving into Cancer does bring a change of emphasis. So if you are going to be positive and enthusiastic, and when you want to make people feel good about themselves, try and do it as early as possible. And so when the moon moves into Cancer, it does make a square to Saturn. And that moon square Saturn, it could slow you down, and some of that positivity might burn off, and you start to see that things need to be taken seriously, and you want to slow down, and you want to make sure that everything is in order, that your home, a family, that's what your moon moving into Cancer, that you have a good rapport with your whole domestic scene. And so that does provide a different energy. And I also have to point out that heliocentrically, Mars is making an opposition to Saturn. Now, Mars was making an opposition to Saturn yesterday. It was pretty exact yesterday. It's pretty exact today. And so some Arians, particularly those who are sort of more sensitive to whatever's going on in the cosmos, might feel that Mars opposition Saturn. And that Mars opposition Saturn might temper some of your optimism. You can see how things can go wrong, and if there's anything bad happening in the world, you might be very aware of it, and in the end you might feel quite frustrated not necessarily because things aren't working out in your life, but because you can see what's going on in the world, and it may seem hopeless, but that provides the distinction, doesn't it? You can be very positive, optimistic, enthusiastic on a personal level, to do with yourself and other people, but when it comes to the world at large, it's a rather different picture. And so you mustn't get too worried about what you read in the news, what you feel, the vibes about the society in which you're living. So you do have to make the distinction there, and also try to be positive about everything. And even if things look really bad, it may be that there's a way through, and if anyone can find that way through, it's going to be you, Aries, isn't it? Taurus, for much of the day, the moon is moving through Gemini. And, as you know, there's a lot of stuff going through Gemini. We've got Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, and, the moon. And so with that Gemini emphasis, for you, Taurus, you may continue to feel that there are financial matters that you need to pay attention to, and the cost of things could catch your attention, and you're not going to want to take risks. I mean, you shouldn't take risks. This is a bad time for Taurians to take risks. But on a positive note, when you start to think about money, you can see different possibilities, I hope, and you shouldn't feel committed to one particular financial course of action. So you might feel you have to do something financially. Maybe you have to pay someone some money, or you have to honor a promise, a financial promise, but you don't. And it's okay to be flexible and always consider how conditions change. So if you're committed to a particular financial direction and things change, you don't have to continue with it if you don't want to. And in certain cases, Taurus, you should consider breaking a promise. Okay, some promises can't be broken if it's a legal contract, but just because you promise something financially, it doesn't mean you have to honor that promise, especially if the situation has changed. And you have a chance now, Taurus, to really think things through. Not just when it comes to money, but with everything. You may have made assumptions, and you think everything's going in one direction, and you think it through, and you realize no, it's not going in this direction at all. And as new information comes your way, you can indeed change your approach. And additionally, Taurus, we have a decile between Venus and Uranus. So Venus is at 22 Aries, Uranus 28 Taurus. So Venus and Uranus are 36 degrees apart, and that is 1/10 of the circle. And with this decile, you can actually be someone who creates change, Uranus. And the struggle then is to work out how you want to create change and how you turn theory into practice. So you have an idea about the way things should be going, and you want to make a change, and you want to make a dramatic change. You feel it's the way forward. And remember, Taurians can be very effective revolutionaries. I mean, Lenin was a Taurus, and so was Robespierre. Pol Pot was a Taurus. I mean, okay, not everyone's favorite person, Pol Pot, but the concept of revolution is not unfamiliar to many Taurians. Saddam Hussein, he was also a Taurus, wasn't he? And so if you have an idea about the way you'd like to change things, then you can actually turn this idea into something real. And then you have to deal with the consequences. The consequences could be difficult to predict, but you do not have to be satisfied with the status quo. And yeah, as a Taurus, you like to keep things on the straight and narrow, but sometimes you reach a point where you realize this isn't good enough and you want to change everything. And I think that Venus decile Uranus should help you. Gemini, we still have loads of planets in your sign. Still got 4 planets in Gemini, Mercury, Sun, Jupiter and the Moon. So continue with whatever you're doing, and maybe even escalate it. Take advantage of it. You're not going to have 4 planets in Gemini for much longer. In fact, if you're in California, then the moon will move out of Gemini, I think, at 10:33 a.m. So if you're in California, have an early start so you can make the most of all those planets in Gemini. And you continue to have lots of ideas, lots of different things you want to do. Don't try to do too many things. 2 things is usually enough if you're a Gemini. If you try to do 6 or 7 things, then things really might not work out. And if you make the most of it, your versatility can really get results, and your versatility can also be appreciated, and your versatility can actually have a social dimension. You can be not all things to all people, but many things to all people. You can adjust to an extent to fit different people's needs and requirements. And this is especially the case if you feel that you want to get someone's attention. And if you're not happy with the way a particular relationship is working out, you can change it. You have the capacity to change it, and it really does help that you've got all these planets in Gemini. You can move from one thing to another. You can move from one concept to another, and that is really going to help things progress. So, I do think that things can move in a very satisfactory way. And I should also point out that the moon is making a conjunction to Jupiter. In fact, the moon is making a sextile to Venus and a conjunction to Venus, sextile to Venus and a conjunction to Jupiter. And so, that Moon-Jupiter conjunction, it's a great aspect, and it's something you can really, really benefit from. Now, that's especially the case if your sun or your ascendant is in the last few degrees of the sign. So if you're, from a sun perspective, if you're born, around, 17th of June onwards, something like that, 16th, 17th of June onwards, you may be able to especially benefit from that Moon-Jupiter conjunction. But, all Geminis can benefit from it. Likewise with your ascendant. So if you've got a late Gemini ascendant, that's going to be especially powerful. But again, it doesn't really matter what degree your ascendant is, that Moon-Jupiter conjunction is going to work for you. And it's hopefully going to be a time where you can really see what you want, and you can see all the possibilities. And so if you have an idea and you have a feeling about what can work for you with this Moon-Jupiter conjunction, then go for it. Or at the very least, make a note of it and tell yourself that you're going to have to sort this thing out and try it out, really as soon as possible. And so the Moon-Jupiter conjunction may represent an opportunity that you really don't want to miss. Now, the moon eventually leaves Gemini, and quite when this is depends on where you are. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, it isn't until tomorrow. If you're in California, it's, I think, at 10:33 a.m. Same if you're in British Columbia or Oregon or Washington State. And when the moon does move into Cancer, there is a change. That Gemini emphasis weakens a little, and additionally you have to consider the consequences of your ideas and your actions. And the moon in Cancer could say something about money, and you may be asking yourself, can you afford it? Whatever it is you think you should be affording. And the moon in Cancer does make a square to Saturn. And so that moon square Saturn could bring you down to earth a bit, but that might be a good thing. So you have all these ideas and all these things you want to do. Moon square Saturn then asks you, well, is it actually possible? And rather than be discouraged by the moon square Saturn, you should instead use it as an opportunity to structure your plans and ideas and really work out what is possible and what is unrealistic, and it might be unrealistic because it just may cost too much money. Cancer. Cancer, we have had this huge Gemini emphasis, which is peaking today, and then the moon leaves Gemini and moves into your sign. And the moon moving into your sign is really a good thing, and I think that is going to be a bit of a relief for you. It's just been a time with all those planets in Gemini that you've had to keep a lot to yourself, and it may have just been that you weren't on best form, and if you wanted to do anything properly, you had to do it on your own. Though the moon in Gemini does have some advantages. The moon today does make a conjunction to Jupiter, and it makes a sextile to Venus, and so Cancer moon conjunct Jupiter is an aspect that very much works in your favour. It is fortunate, and that good fortune might not be obvious. It's nothing that you have to shout about, but in your own quiet way, you can turn things round, and very much to your advantage. And so, just because you're not feeling especially sociable, doesn't mean to say that you have to, do nothing. There are things going on, and when you're alone, you're probably in a position where you can benefit from, whatever it is that the universe has to offer. In a crowd, it might be more difficult. And the moon does enter Cancer today. Now, how important that is, well, it does depend on where you are. If you're in California or US West Coast, then moon goes into Cancer this morning, and so for most of the day you've got the benefits of the moon moving into your sign, and also the responsibilities. If you're in the East Coast, then that doesn't take place until I think 1:33 p.m. It's just after lunch. And then if you're in Europe, that's early evening, and if you're in Australia, well, that's tomorrow. And the thing is that when the moon moves into Cancer, it straight away makes a square to Saturn. And this is an interesting aspect because it's quite novel, because you have not experienced a square between the moon in Cancer and Saturn in Aries for a long time, several decades. If you're in your 20s, you may have never experienced it before, and so that's the moon, your ruler, square Saturn in Aries, and with moon in Cancer. And I actually think that this moon Saturn square may actually be very useful. It's very very focused, and it allows you to consider what matters, and you are reminded with this square that Saturn is now in Aries. And with Saturn in Aries, it is a time when Cancerians do have to be responsible, and they have to take their life direction very seriously. If you've got a job, taking that seriously, understanding the limitations of a job, but also the opportunities. And that moon square Saturn allows you to really think about what matters to you and the broad direction in which you feel you need to move. And we all have a direction. It's not about any particular age or stage of life. Whatever one stage of life, one is trying to achieve something, or at least one should be trying to achieve something. And that moon square Saturn is a reminder of what you haven't achieved so far, but also what you need to do in the near future. Leo, you are quite sunny, I mean, sunny is an adjective that is actually sometimes used to describe Leo in general. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? Because the sun is the ruler of Leo. But today in particular, you are quite sunny. I mean, most Leos are going to be sunny. We must be careful about making generalizations. But you have a broadly happy, optimistic view. At least you should do. Or rather, I hope you have a happy and optimistic view. Of course, these 12-sign forecasts, they don't work for everyone. And I sometimes get comments saying, telling me this, that hasn't worked at all. And sometimes it's harsher than that. But yeah, that is the nature of the game. That is the nature of 12-sign astrology. Well, it's actually the nature of astrology in general. It doesn't work for everyone, and one always needs to be skeptical about it. And I would have said, Leo, ideally you are feeling in a reasonably good mood, and you feel that that things can work. Even if there are a few hurdles, if not everything is easy, you still feel that in the end it's going to work out. And this is something you're able to transmit if you make the effort. You can transmit your optimism, and other people can pick up on it. And maybe you can make a special effort to transmit this optimism. So if other people are feeling a little under the weather, you do have the opportunity to cheer them up. Hence what I suggested, that today you might be feeling sunny, or at least you can be sunny, if you make the effort. And being sunny is, or can be, an important part of the Leo approach, and even the Leo personality. And from a social viewpoint, I think it is a time when Leos can be more extroverted than usual, and you can benefit from a conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter. Moon-Jupiter conjunction is, it's a great aspect, and it allows you to be enthusiastic, and also to benefit from other people, and by the same token, they can benefit from you. And you shouldn't be afraid of articulating a positive and optimistic message. So do take advantage of it all, and don't feel that you've got all the time in the world. Things can change, and things will change, because the moon will move out of Gemini and into Cancer. So when the moon moves into Cancer, things will slow down, and you might not have the opportunities that you had sort of earlier in the day. So don't be complacent. And when the moon does move into Cancer, you may feel that some of your extroversion has run its course, and that you now want to calm things down a bit, and find somewhere safe and secure. And additionally, with moon moving into Cancer, when it moves into Cancer, it makes a square to Saturn and Neptune, and so you may just feel, short term at least, that you've gone as far as you can. You've done your best, and you're not able to do any more. And in fact, you may be afraid of going too far, and that might be a valid fear. You try your best, you try to be enthusiastic, you are successful, hopefully you get people's attention, but you don't want to push your luck. And that might be what Moon moving into Cancer is about, making that square to Saturn. Now, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, you don't have to worry about that Moon square Saturn today, because that happens tomorrow. But if you're in the Americas or in Europe or Africa, then you certainly have to consider that Moon square Saturn in the end. Don't feel that it can be entirely avoided. And it goes back to what I was saying. Today try to have an early start. Do whatever you can, really make things happen, and give it your best shot. And then, the moon will move into Cancer, and things will change, and things will, I think, slow down. Virgo. There's still a load of planets in Gemini, and it's a good idea that you try to take advantage of the situation. You're not going to have this concentration in Gemini for much longer, and the day starts with the moon in Gemini, and the moon will eventually leave the sign. It could leave the sign, move into Cancer as early as this morning if you're in California. It might not happen until tomorrow if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but for the moment, you need to take advantage of this Gemini build-up. As I was saying yesterday, Gemini is an angular sign from a Virgo perspective, and it is about your ambitions, what you want to do, how you want to project yourself. And so Virgo, it's not a time to be laid back. You need to do whatever you can to push forward with your agenda, and think about what it is that you want to achieve, and don't think that you've got a lot of time to finish it all off in. There isn't much time, because Jupiter is soon going to move into Cancer. Now, when Jupiter moves into Cancer, it's not the end of the world. In fact, Jupiter works very well in Cancer, but it just does feel that there's something you may be working on, should be working on, that you need to get it together. And this build-up in Gemini should have reminded you that there might be a bit of urgency here. Now, I don't want to panic you, but just think about what it is that you're trying to sort out. And today one aspect we've got is a conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter, and Moon Jupiter conjunction is great. It's one of the best aspects in the book, and it's in Gemini, an angular sign as far as you are concerned, and so that does make you lucky. And so if there's something you want to do, and you're not too sure whether or not it's going to work, give it a go, because with that Moon Jupiter conjunction, there is a good chance that it can work out. I mean, provided it is reasonable. I'm not encouraging you to take massive risks. And additionally, the moon is not just making a conjunction to Jupiter; it's actually making a sextile to Venus. So the moon is separating from a sextile to Venus, moving towards a conjunction with Jupiter, and that aspect can be quite helpful as far as getting on with other people are concerned. I think that you really can have an impact, and people will like you, and you'll know how to moderate your approach when dealing with different people. And there's also something about you that is just interesting, that you are not someone who can just be ignored. It does seem as if you have got something really quite interesting to offer. And so, from a social perspective, and even an interpersonal perspective, Virgo, don't underestimate how much influence you can have. And if you want to change the nature of certain relationships and contacts that you have, then I think there's a good chance that you're going to be able to do it. And that might require some patience. You might start off the day somehow thinking that things are slow, because you're not fully able to wheel out your your desires, your ambitions, what you want. And that would be a shame, as I've already indicated, because there's so much going your way today. It would just be a shame if your own negativity or your rootedness to the past could just spoil things. And it is unnecessary, but still you have to be aware of that of a tendency you might have to just look to the past rather than look to the future. But I do think it's something you can get over, and I really do want to emphasize that it can be a great day, and that Moon Jupiter conjunction should very much help you out. Now, one thing, Moon will change sign. If you're in California, it does change sign this morning, and will be early evening if you're in Europe. And that sign change, Moon does move into Cancer, and Moon works pretty well in Cancer. Moon rules Cancer, and so with the Moon in Cancer, there may be a new set of opportunities. Moon in Cancer is a fairly sociable place for the Moon to be, especially from a Virgoan perspective, and so there may come a point when you are able to relax some of your own ambitions and start to think about other people and what other people want, and interacting with your friends might be fun, but don't expect too much. The Moon in Cancer, it is making a square to Saturn, so there are going to be limits to how close you're able to get to people, or to how close you're going to want to get to people, because you may not be entirely trusting with Moon square Saturn, and it's probably a good thing not to be entirely trusting, but you don't at the same time want to be paranoid. Libra, you have another day when you can make the most of who you are, and also you don't have to be satisfied with the way things have been. There can be change, and you can change yourself, and you can perhaps put yourself in touch with new experiences, and you shouldn't think that you've sorted everything out and that everything is there right in front of you. Sometimes you have to look further afield, and if you're prepared to look further afield, then you might be pleasantly surprised, especially as there is a conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter in Gemini. It's a great aspect, that Moon conjunct Jupiter, especially as it's actually linked up with Venus. So the Moon makes a sextile to Venus, which is your ruling planet, and then it makes a conjunction to Jupiter. And so, with those two aspects, I think that you can be fortunate, and also you have a chance to see things in a new way, perhaps helped by another person. Venus is still in Aries, and so with Venus in Aries, it is a time when you are sort of on and off, more reliant than usual on certain other people, and certain other people could come up with the goods with that Moon sextile Venus, and also the fact that Moon is making a conjunction to Jupiter. So perhaps with another person's help, you can really see things in a new way. And additionally, Venus is still making a trine to Mars. So, in fact, relationships could really work your way, and you may be pleased with other people's response to you. But don't jump to conclusions. Saturn has just moved into Aries. You're still getting used to Saturn moving into Aries, and it's going to be easy for you to reach conclusions about other people, reach perhaps negative conclusions about other people, think that other people are a problem when they're not a problem at all. And that might especially be the case when the moon moves into Cancer. And so the moon moves into Cancer could be as early as around 10:30 in the morning. I think 10:33 in the morning if you're in California. Might not be until tomorrow if you're in Australia or New Zealand or Kamchatka or East Asia. But when the moon moves into Cancer, it makes a square to Saturn. So moon moving into Cancer is a very dynamic thing to happen, and it might make you feel that you need to do something, and you're aware of what you want to achieve. And then moon in Cancer makes a square to Saturn. So by the end of the day, some Librans may think that they're being held back, and it's not your fault if things aren't entirely going your way. But if you do feel held back at some stage in the day, then just consider the possibility that it's no one's fault, that no one is actually holding you back. No one wants you to fail. And it could be your own projection, imagining that something is holding you back, because at some level you don't want to move. It's more comfortable being where you are, and so you can imagine all sorts of things as an excuse. So don't allow excuses to prevent you from moving forward and taking what is yours. It's easy to project, but people do want you to succeed, and I don't actually think anyone is deliberately trying to hold you back, even though at times it might feel that way. Scorpio, it's fairly similar to today. There are still a lot of planets in Gemini. You're having to deal with all of that Gemini energy. And that Gemini energy is not quite in accordance with the typical Scorpio. It might be stuff that you just don't want to deal with, and you have to deal with it, but it's kind of annoying. On the other hand, you're able to think things through, and you're able to think things through in a way that is potentially very deep and very profound. And if you want to really understand something today, then I really think that you can. And you're going to be helped by a conjunction between the moon and Jupiter. So this moon-Jupiter conjunction might allow you to get into something that you're not really very familiar with. You may even feel a bit worried about it, but you get into it, you get involved with something, and then you start to see the truth of the matter, and you get answers. And once you start to see the truth of the matter, you can completely change your views, and what seemed to be a problem might actually be an opportunity. So, it's important to be open-minded and not to assume that something is a problem when it might actually be a real opportunity for you. And additionally, Scorpio, like yesterday, you are someone who is very powerful. You are able to make your influence felt, and people are not going to ignore you. And that's especially the case if you say what's on your mind, if you're open and you're honest. Sometimes that can be difficult for Scorpios to be, especially with all these planets in Gemini, which are a distraction, or they might feel like a distraction, but they're actually a motivator. But if you are open and honest, then you're going to have an impact, and people will listen to you, and they'll probably reach the opinion that you know what you're talking about, and that you are someone to be trusted. And Scorpio, that does give you responsibility. If you can get people to trust you, then you have to ask, are you worthy of another person's trust? And it's not enough just to be able to manipulate someone into doing something your way. Yeah, sure, you can do it, but it has to be for a reason, and it has to be for a purpose which is beneficial for everyone, not just for you. So Scorpios do have a reputation for being manipulative, and actually today I think you can be very manipulative, and so you have to ask yourself, where is it going, and are you in the right, and are you behaving in a way that is moral and above board? Oh, and depending on where you are, the moon does move into Cancer. Okay, the moon doesn't move into Cancer if you're in Australia or New Zealand until tomorrow, but if you're in California, the moon moves into Cancer this morning, around lunchtime on the east coast of America. And when the moon moves into Cancer, that does change things. The Gemini emphasis starts to break down. And with the moon in Cancer, you feel that you have more space, that you've got room to breathe. And yet the moon is in Cancer because it's in your element. Cancer is a water sign. And so with the moon moving into Cancer, you're feeling better, and you may also feel that it's a time when you want to escape from something. You hadn't had the opportunity to escape from it, and now you want to escape from it. And that might be the fact that when the moon moves into Cancer, it makes a square to Saturn, and so moon moves, and it makes a square to Neptune. So as the moon moves into Cancer, you confront something that is holding you back, and then you move on, and you have clear water in front of you. And so that's something to enjoy. When there's clear water in front of you, that just means no action, no drama. And I think that's what you really want, isn't it? I mean, you don't need drama. And right now, life is complicated enough without having some extra complication. But yeah, with the moon in Cancer, I think actually things may simplify. But I'll be talking more about moon in Cancer when I do your horoscope for tomorrow, Thursday. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, it's another day when relationships may be of some importance, and that is because of all these planets in Gemini, these 4 planets in Gemini, Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, and the Moon. Though the Moon will be moving out of Gemini into Cancer. Certainly if you're in the Americas, it'll move out this morning. If you're in California, lunchtime if you're in on the East Coast, for example New York. So that emphasis is starting to reach its peak and to slowly break down, but it's still there. And so it's another day where other people can't be avoided, I don't think. At least their influence can't be avoided. Even if you don't meet anyone over the day, you're still aware of other people's influence and how they can have an impact on you. And you've also got a conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter in Gemini, and that Moon-Jupiter conjunction, it's a great aspect, and the Moon is a potentially emotional influence, and it does allow you to have some understanding of what motivates other people, and you kind of get it. And at the same time, you can be a motivator yourself. Moon-Jupiter conjunction can allow Sagittarians to go with the flow and to be encouraging, and it's not all about you. It's partially about another person, and making sure that they're okay, and asking questions about another person's state of mind and state of health. That would be a useful thing to do. I think you can get answers, and in your own way, you can be quite a healing influence. In fact, don't forget that Jupiter, your ruler, is still quite close to a sextile of Chiron, and the moon is making a sextile to Chiron. So you could say that the moon is bringing together Jupiter and Chiron, even though Jupiter and Chiron are nearly 2 degrees apart from that sextile. So there's a chance there, Sagittarius, to really help people out, and to provide assistance. Though when you're dealing with other people in general, not necessarily individuals, but people in general, society in general, you're beginning to feel that it may not be worth the effort. So this reminds us that this concept of other people can be seen in different ways. You can see it in a one-to-one sense, and that's fine. I think from a one-to-one viewpoint, things are looking quite good. But when you're dealing with it from a collective view, when you're dealing with contacts, society, having to consider what the group is thinking, well, that may be more of a problem. You may think that you are disconnected there, that you and the group, you're just not on the same wavelength. And so if you're going to somewhere where there are a lot of people around, then you're not going to be comfortable. And so if you are going to have a sociable day, then deal with people, one at a time. Don't try to deal with people en masse, because it won't be satisfying, and you'll just feel that you're in the wrong place. And so do be very aware of your social limitations today. But I don't want to take away from the fact that it can be a great day, especially because of that Moon Jupiter conjunction, and it can be a great day potentially because of the way you're able to interact with probably one other person. It could be 2 other people, but probably a Moon Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, so you do think that there may be 2 people to consider, but a couple of people can really be of great benefit to you, and you can be of great benefit to them as well. Capricorn, you're able to be pleasant today. It might be through gritted teeth, but you can be pleasant, and you can be there for people. Again, you might not want to be, but you can be. And so if you're in a situation where you have to make a special effort to be nice, then that is absolutely something that you can do. And in most cases, people are going to respond very well to you. Again, if you make a bit of an effort. If you don't make any effort, well, that's a different matter. But I think that you're looking for harmony, and you're looking for peace, and you will do what it takes. And as far as things going on today, where the broad emphasis is, it's much like yesterday. I think that yesterday and today you are aware that there are just things that need to be done, and ideally you won't be disturbed. Though if you are disturbed, you can take it in your stride. You're not going to be scary. You're not going to be antisocial, but you can just quietly get on with whatever you need to do, and by and large you're going to be doing a good job. And I also think that you may be actually helped by another person's intervention. So don't feel, Capricorn, that you have to do everything on your own. I mean, the moon is making a conjunction to Jupiter. Moon is making a sextile to Venus. As far as I'm concerned, this is about getting help and perhaps bringing people into your life on your terms, and showing them what they can do for you. And you can do things for them, but you can afford to be selfish, but you can be selfish in such a way that is actually quite inclusive, because you've got things you want to do and you want to let people help you out. And the moon does change sign today, and the moon moves out of Gemini into out of Gemini into Cancer. And this sign change could be this morning if you're in California or Oregon or British Columbia, or even in Alaska or Hawaii. It could be tomorrow if you're in Australia or New Zealand. It'll be this evening if you're in Europe or Africa. Early evening by and large, I think. And when the moon moves into Cancer, there is a change, and it is a time when you do have to consider other people even more than when the moon was in Gemini. And when the moon goes into Cancer, it does make a square to Saturn, and that moon square Saturn probably is important. It is the first major aspect involving the moon and Saturn since Saturn moved into Aries. So Saturn moved into Aries last weekend, and I don't know whether you felt it. Saturn moving into a cardinal sign, and Saturn is your ruler. That matters, and it will be a time where you are thinking hard about security, home, family, your domestic life, and then the moon challenges it all, because the moon in Cancer makes a square to Saturn, and you might respond to other people in a new way, and you might be quick to regard certain people as being threatening, or you might feel that they're going to just mess things up for you. Now, you're trying your hardest to be friendly and sociable, and you can. I mean, as I've said, you can deal with people very well, as I said at the beginning of this piece, through gritted teeth. But the challenge may be even more intense when the moon actually makes that square to Saturn, and you just may find that you are so concerned with your own needs and interests that you are really tempted to close down the shutters, put someone off. Someone is interfering, someone is just in your way, and what do you do? Now, it perhaps depends on the circumstances. There may be some people who you need to integrate into your life, but it just could be with that moon square Saturn, you realize that you don't want to be crowded out, and you perhaps see that certain relationships need to be adjusted. They might even have to end. But there's another way of looking at moon square Saturn, and that could be about existing relationships, and just realizing that you and the other person, whoever that other person is, they might have a difference of opinion, and your first inclination might be to think that you are right and they're wrong, but it might actually be the other way round, because Saturn is going to be in Aries, which is in a sign of it. Saturn's in Aries, which is in a sign of its fall, and the Moon is in Cancer, which is in which is in its own sign. And so that Moon square Saturn may indicate a person who is in the right and who is honourable, but you could treat them unfairly in the end. And just as you're trying your hardest to be nice, but somehow you get it wrong. So throughout the day and into tomorrow, really, really think about how you're treating people, and don't spoil it, right at the end by just brushing someone off and being disrespectful. You don't even mean to, but you just do it because you feel that way. And so keep focusing and keep being nice. You don't have to be too nice. I'm not saying you have to be nice in such a way that compromises your own vital interests, but a bit of niceness throughout the day is going to be worth the effort. Aquarius, you're feeling good about yourself. At least you should be feeling good about yourself. You are able to be happy and spontaneous, and you're someone who you can be the center of things, and your enthusiasm can get you noticed, and you just need to do it in a way that is in accordance with your own beliefs. It's not a time where you have to compromise, do things other people's way, worry about what other people are thinking. Just do what feels right. If you try to accommodate other people too hard, then it's going to go wrong, because you're not going to be able to go all the way. If you try to accommodate someone, you're only going to get halfway there, and in the end, it could actually end up with an argument or a disagreement. So just be yourself right from the beginning. Be selfish right from the beginning, and then everyone's going to be happy. And in particular, you're going to be able to state your case, state your position, and so that everyone is clear about who you are and what you want, and you can benefit in many different ways. And there is a conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter in Gemini, and this conjunction can just make you realize how well things are going. And if you entirely focus on something that you're good at, that you feel comfortable with, then really there'll be no stopping you. And don't be too self-conscious over the course of the day. Don't worry too much about what people are thinking and how people are evaluating you. There's always room for a bit of childish irresponsibility. You don't want to take your responsibility too far, but you don't want to tie yourself up in knots, and that would be very unnecessary. And at the same time, Aquarius, you're able to, I think, articulate yourself very well. Everyone will know what's on your mind, and by saying what's on your mind, then that creates a situation where you can get feedback, and you may be in a position where you can very much benefit from other people's positivity. People are positive if you give them a chance. So if you are positive about what you are doing, then you're going to get optimism and positivity and enthusiasm in return. So do give people a chance, but it's always on your terms. It's not a day for doing things that you don't want to do. And again, if you make it very clear about how you want to run things, then I think people will be quite happy. They may even want to follow your lead. So, today does look good, and I think relationships can actually be very satisfying. But it's just so important that you are clear right from the beginning, what you want, and if you are clear, again, that is going to be appreciated. And I think that it is a day when you can really enjoy other people's company. It will be on your terms, and it's certainly not a day for doing anything that you don't want to do. Pisces, you're maybe not feeling especially sociable. You're feeling okay in yourself. You're feeling quite content, but as far as the outside world is concerned, you don't seem to be especially interested, and you don't feel a burning desire to go out and meet lots of different people. It's not something that's of great appeal to you, and it's best to accept that and not try to be someone you are not. And there might be suggestions that you do something different, that you go somewhere, that you go to different places. But these suggestions should be ignored, or invitations should maybe be politely declined, because you're not in the mood. But when you are doing things on your own terms, you are fine, in your own way. And it could often be the case that the less contact you have with other people, the happier you're going to feel. And that may not be a typically Piscean approach, but I think that for today, that does work quite well. And there may be things that you need to finish off. Jupiter is now at 2715 Gemini. It's just moving into the last few degrees of the sign. Okay, it will make the change soon enough when it moves into Cancer. Now, when does it move into Cancer? I keep forgetting. Jupiter moves into Cancer. Is it the 9th and the 10th? Yeah, it's 9th, 10th of June. So we haven't got much longer now. Less than a fortnight. But while Jupiter is moving through those last few degrees of Gemini, then stick to what you know and trust. It may be that you're finishing something off, but you're just not ready to be an extrovert, to be sociable, to tell everyone what you're doing. You're not ready, I don't think. And so just stick with it, and you don't have to listen to other people's promptings. And ideally, you're focusing on your home and your family. Like yesterday, that's where the action is, and I think it's also where your heart is as well. Now, the moon does eventually move out of Gemini, and it moves into Cancer. Now, that could be this morning if you're in California. Well, it might not be until tomorrow if you're not in Australia. In Europe and Africa, sort of early evening is when the moon moves into Cancer, I think. And so, with the moon moving into Cancer, there is a change. Moon is moving into a water sign, and there hasn't been any water around. But Saturn's moved out of Pisces, and so that might have been a problem for some Pisceans. You felt things were a bit dry, that there wasn't much emotion around, and it could have been that you just weren't fully able to express yourself. I mean, you were quite happy, but that might have been a reason why you perhaps should have been wary of social interaction, because there just wasn't that ability to deal with people emotionally. I mean, it's not your fault. It's kind of their fault, or no, it's not anyone's fault. It's just the way it is. And then the moon moves into Cancer. Things just do get easier, or will get easier with the moon moving into Cancer, at least on an emotional level. You're going to find it easier to express your feelings. There may be, when the moon moves into Cancer, it does make a square to Saturn, and a square to Neptune. So there may be a moment when things feel completely stuck when the moon moves into Cancer, but it's a very brief moment. So if you do feel a moment of stuckness as the moon moves into Cancer, don't worry about it. It's just passing, and once you get over that hurdle, you'll find that things are easier and that things really are flowing again. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and it's now time to look at the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 10, which is treading. Now, treading, didn't we have that yesterday? Treading is about having to tread carefully. And the reason we have to tread carefully is because we're dealing with a tiger. And it's a difficult situation, and we don't want to tread on the tiger's tail. And so we need to be very, very cautious. But just because there is a danger does not mean that we can't make progress. We can indeed make progress. We can get past the tiger, and the tiger is not necessarily going to bite us. And we have two lines moving. We have the fourth line and the sixth line moving. And with the fourth line moving, we are able to be very cautious. We really can do it. We can feel our power. We know we've got the capacity to do it, but we also know where the dangers lie. And so we can carefully move forward and get past the obstacle and gingerly get through it. And then the sixth line moves, and that seems to be a time when things do come together, when we're really past the tiger, and we can start looking to the future, and we can start seeing the benefits of all our efforts in the past. So we look back at the past, we see what we've done in the past, and we can now see how it's all coming together, and that our caution was certainly worthwhile. We'd learnt the lessons. Perhaps there'd been previous mistakes. We'd learnt from those mistakes, and now we can move forward. And we still move forward with caution, because two lines moving, we move to a second hexagram, and we move to hexagram number 60, which is limitation. So we're not in a position where we can just do whatever we like, but we understand the limitations that are necessary, and we don't have to really be obsessed about these limitations. We don't want to limit ourselves for the sake of it. We don't want to be hyper-disciplined and torture ourselves to get things right and say, well, we can't do this, you can't do that. If limitations are grinding us down, then we shouldn't get involved in that. But we know what we can do, and we know what we can't do, and so that means we make good progress. And so it's a day when there are a few dangers, but we know how to handle them, and we get through to the other side without any real problems. And it's as simple as that. Not a dramatic I Ching, but I would have said very constructive. And now I want to look at what has been going on in Liverpool. So on Monday the 26th, there was this event where in Liverpool literally hundreds of thousands of people were celebrating the fact that Liverpool had have got the top spot in the Premier League. I think that's what it is, and it was a cause of celebration. Liverpool, the best, in terms of the last season, the best club in England and Wales. Scotland has its own football league, by the way. So that was a day of celebration, but it became a day of concern, and it was spoilt by the fact that someone drove their car into a crowd. I don't think we know quite what it's about. The news was very clear to emphasise that it was a 53-year-old white male, I think. So the suggestion is it's not a terrorist event, and I don't think it's not. It's not some sort of religious attack. That is the suggestion, but we don't really know what happened. And so here's a chart for the event. So let's look at that. So this is when it happened. I think it happened at around 6 o'clock on May the 26th. Now, as far as I know, no one has been killed. So it wasn't like a sort of super tragedy, not like some of the other tragedies that Liverpool have been involved in, like Heysel Stadium and Hillsborough. And I'll be looking at those charts in a moment. But it certainly spoilt the day, and some people were severely injured. And as far as just a chart of the event is concerned, Mars was on the midheaven, and Mars was square true black moon Lilith, and this event happened just before a new moon. So the new moon was at 6 Gemini. So this was some hours before. I think it was about 10 hours before the new moon, and that Mars square true black moon Lilith is not a pleasant aspect, and there is a darkness to it, and it may just be about destructive impulses, and we don't know what was going on in that car, what was going on in the mind of that person. We don't even know if it was a deliberate action. I mean, it could have been an accident. I don't know. And also, we see Moon conjunct Uranus on the 8th house cusp. Now, so far there haven't been any deaths, so it may not be about death. But the 8th house is still, quite an unfortunate house. And having Moon conjunct Uranus, that sort of fits a dramatic event, which is unfortunate. Clearly, it's unfortunate, and so that says something about the event. I don't think it tells us. It doesn't tell us everything, but maybe we should be considering other charts. So there is a chart of Liverpool, and there is a chart of Liverpool Football Club. So here's a chart of Liverpool. So Liverpool was created, or it was recognised as a town by King John on. So that's Liverpool FC. Sorry, let's look at Liverpool, the city itself, on August the 28th. 1207. Now this chart says September the 4th. That's because this software I'm using seems to really want me to convert it to the Gregorian calendar, but the Julian calendar was in force at the time, and I checked this again. I checked August the 28th against the ephemeris on astro.com, and that fitted. So this is the noon chart for when Liverpool came into being as a city. And So, this event was not just about Liverpool Football Club. It was about the town of Liverpool. I mean, Liverpool did become a city in 1880, but I do think that the 1207 chart should be looked at. And so here are the transits to Liverpool, the 1207 chart, at the time of this event. And so Liverpool has Venus in Libra and Venus opposition Neptune in Libra. I mean, this says maybe something about Liverpool. I've never been to Liverpool, and so it's not a town I really know anything about. It's somehow different from the rest of the country. It has its traditionally is a town that always votes Labour. It's conservative. Haven't done well in politically. Haven't done well in Liverpool for a long time, and of course it's a home of the Beatles. And what else? In the 19th century, there was a time when there was more money coming into the country from Liverpool than from London. It was, in the 19th century, an incredibly powerful city, and because it was a port, and it was a city that was also connected with the slave trade. And so the Venus opposition Neptune was being hit by that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So the Saturn-Neptune conjunction was impacting Venus. Okay, Saturn was at 0 degrees 7 Aries, and you could say that that's quite a long way from Venus, but you've got Neptune there as well. So you could say that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction was hitting Liverpool's Venus-Neptune opposition. So maybe that planet that was working. And additionally, Liverpool has its Mars at 2 degrees Scorpio, and the ascendant at the time when that car went into the crowd was at 1 degree. Was at 2 degrees Scorpio. So the transiting ascendant was picking up on the Mars, Liverpool's Mars, that 1207 Mars over 800 years ago. The ascendant was picking up on it, and of course Mars is a planet which is connected with aggression and attacks, and Pluto was sort of involved as well, because transiting Pluto was starting to move towards a square of Liverpool's Mars, and then the ascendant was picking up on it. So that chart for Liverpool may quite well be active, and we shouldn't ignore a chart just because it happened 800 years ago. I think that is certainly a chart to look at. And then there is a chart for Liverpool Football Club, and here's a chart of Liverpool FC. I don't know what time they came into being, but the date was June the 3rd, 1892, and Liverpool Football Club has a conjunction between Neptune and Pluto, a pretty close conjunction between Neptune and Pluto, and that tells us something about the generational astrology of when this was born. A lot of people born around that Neptune-Pluto conjunction fought in the First World War, and so there is something rather unpleasant about that conjunction. And Uranus is at 2 degrees Scorpio. So Uranus at the time of the founding of Liverpool Football Club, 2 degrees, that rings a bell, because the ascendant when the ascendant, when that car went into the crowd, was at 2 degrees Scorpio. So that ascendant was not just picking up on the Mars of, let's just go back to the attack. This ascendant of 2 degrees Scorpio was conjunct the Mars of the 1207 Liverpool chart, and it was also conjunct the Uranus of the 1892 chart for the founding of Liverpool FC. And Liverpool's Venus is in Cancer, and when you're talking about Venus in Cancer, there is a sentimentality to Venus in Cancer. I mean, I've got my Venus is in Cancer, and with football, in English football, there is always that sentimentality, which I don't really understand, but people have sort of long memories. Disasters get remembered. You know, there's all this idea about the football supporters are part of a family. You know, Venus in Cancer, and you know, when there is a tragedy, it goes. You know, it is just not forgotten. And you know, it's not just about Liverpool. I mean, in sort of 1958, when at Munich airport, when the sort of most of the sort of Manchester United team got killed in a plane crash. You know, that was a long time ago. That was 60, well, getting on for 70 years ago. But it's still as if it was yesterday if you're a supporter of Manchester United. So Venus in Cancer, you know, says something about a football club that has real sentimentality, and that Venus in Cancer is square true black moon Lilith, and I think that says something about, you know, being sentimental and remembering the tragedies of the past. So those are a few thoughts about Liverpool FC's chart. And then there's the question: is does that Liverpool FC chart, you know, how does it fit with what happened on the 26th? We already know that. Let's see what's so there is. There's Liverpool FC's Uranus. You can see the ascendant is transiting it. So that's probably the main event. And as far as other things going on, you know, transiting Pluto was square Liverpool FC's Uranus. So remember, transiting Pluto was square Liverpool's 1207 Mars, but transiting Pluto is also square Liverpool FC's Uranus, and the ascendant was picking up on it. So, you know, at the time of this this event on Monday, the ascendant was square Pluto. So you know, that gives us an idea about you know, what was happening. And I think it might also be useful to look back at previous events. And there have been these two other tragedies involving Liverpool, and one of them was at Heysel Stadium. And so Heysel Stadium, which took place on May the 29th, 1985. So it actually took place almost exactly 40 years before the ramming incident that we just had at Liverpool. And so, I mean, that's kind of not such the mega coincidence it sounds, because, you know, the end of May, beginning of June is really the end of the football season. You know, that's when the final matches are played, and when you know who is at the top of the league, when you get playoffs to see who's going to get promoted. So we had playoffs over last weekend. For example, I don't know, Wimbledon got promoted to the third tier of football. For example. Wimbledon AFC, I noticed that. I mean, I kind of forget about what's happening with football in the UK, but I noticed that. And Heysel Stadium was a European Cup final, and it was between Liverpool and Juventus, and it took place in Belgium, in the Heysel Stadium. And as a result of this event, a lot of Juventus fans were killed, and numerous factors were blamed, like the old stadium, and I think there was some police officer was sentenced for manslaughter. So there was the way the whole thing was organised was criticised, but additionally, Liverpool fans were criticised, or some Liverpool fans who were behaving as hooligans, and as a result of this, Liverpool, and in fact I think all English clubs, were banned from European football for something like 5 or 6 years. So it was a catastrophic event, and it should have been a celebration. Liverpool getting into the final of the European Cup, playing Juventus, but in fact it turned into a tragedy. So there are sort of echoes of what happened last Monday. It was supposed to be a celebration, but it turned into more like a tragedy. And so here's a chart of Heysel Stadium. It's the disturbances started at 7 o'clock in the evening, and there was Sun Chiron conjunction. So that Sun Chiron conjunction was fairly exact, and it was at 8 degrees Gemini. Now that's kind of interesting, because if we go back to the horoscope of Liverpool FC, and we compare this with Heysel Stadium. So Liverpool FC there's its Neptune-Pluto conjunction at 8 degrees Gemini. And so there was a Sun-Chiron conjunction at 8 degrees Gemini. So the Sun is always going to be conjunct the Neptune-Pluto conjunction, at this time of year. And this time of year, it's always an important time for the football season. And so that's not in itself especially spectacular. But when you throw in Chiron, that is obviously a very serious wound, which Liverpool may not sort of quite be able to ever quite get over with. And so that was probably the major sort of event at Heysel Stadium. Well, you can also see that Liverpool has Liverpool has a Mercury. Liverpool FC, when it came into being, had a Mercury-Saturn square, and so that Mercury-Saturn trine. Now, it might sound like a trine, and trine, good news, but you could say that Liverpool FC, with its Mercury-Saturn trine, there's something serious about that. And Mercury-Saturn can be about bad news. I mean, that is one way of looking at it, and it's Mercury-Saturn with its Mercury. So the Mercury-Saturn square trine at 23-24 of the sign. So Mercury at 24 Taurus, Saturn at 23 Virgo. So the midpoint of those two would be at around 23. Cancer, and so at the Heysel Stadium, I think the Sun was actually semi-square the Mercury Saturn conjunction, and so this Sun Chiron transiting Sun Chiron aspect at the time of the Heysel Stadium was on Liverpool's Mercury Saturn midpoint, and so that is bad news. This news, negative news, which is really upsetting everything. And additionally, in its chart, Liverpool FC, if you look at that Neptune-Pluto conjunction, Neptune-Pluto is making a 45-degree aspect to 23 Cancer. So in other words, that Neptune-Pluto is on the Mercury-Saturn midpoint of Liverpool FC. So this idea of bad news and which is somehow upsetting the club's history and in fact wrecking good news, bad news, celebration and tragedy. You could actually see this as being part of Liverpool FC's horoscope. And another event was Hillsborough. So Hillsborough, there was I think it was a semi-final of the FA Cup in which Liverpool eventually won that competition, but in Hillsborough there was crushing, and I think a lot of Liverpool fans were killed in Hillsborough. So this took place April the 15th, 1989, and here's a chart for Hillsborough. We don't know exactly when it happened because it started at a particular time. So it's not like 2:00 was when the event happened. It was more of a sort of an ongoing thing, which in the end led to I think it was nearly 100 Liverpool fans were killed, and so this is a major part of Liverpool FC's history, and you could say that it's linked with the horoscope of the club. I'm not saying that anything especially dramatic was going on at the time of Hillsborough for Liverpool, but Jupiter was about to move towards a conjunction of Liverpool FC's Pluto. Well, that might say the fact that they actually went on to win this competition, even though in the semi-final, nearly 100 people were killed, nearly 100 fans were killed. So it's not that I don't think I can find anything specific regarding this, but I think that instead we should see Hillsborough as being linked with Liverpool FC's chart. And I think that going back to Liverpool FC's chart, it's that Neptune-Pluto conjunction, and the fact that the Neptune-Pluto conjunction is semi-square the Mercury-Saturn midpoint, it does indicate that there is this always this sense of bad news and tragedy, and that Venus is also on the Mercury-Saturn midpoint, that Venus in Cancer, and that sentimentality about the past, and it just goes on. And so unfortunately I do think that the events of Monday are in a way part of a pattern, and I think that part of a pattern may relate back to Liverpool FC's horoscope. And sorry to have been a bit all over the place. Football is not a subject that I know a great deal about, but maybe I'm suggesting some areas that you might want to think about. And certainly we should be looking at the horoscopes of football clubs and cities, and they can tell us about what is going to be happening in the future. And I'm not saying that one could have predicted what was going to happen on Monday just on the basis of Liverpool FC's chart, although the Heysel Stadium event with that Sun Chiron conjunction right on Liverpool FC's Neptune Pluto was quite pronounced, I think. And I think that's good evidence that that astrology can work, and that you should be looking at the horoscopes of football clubs. Anyway, I've said enough. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'm super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.